Hello friends. Well, it's been a while, hasn't it? October actually, since my last full post to you all. So why the pause? Well, probably like most of you, there's been a lot of changes going on behind the scenes. And these days, shall I say, I'm a bit more in tune with myself, knowing when I need to retreat, when I need to regroup, to reinvent, and when to push forward. How about you? How are you doing right now? So, welcome back if you've been here before, and welcome if this is your first time to SlowForm Living with Salema, which I created as an invitation for you to slow it down, pause, and nestle into some reflections on life, inspired by my own journey of slow living on the water, which is where I'm recording this on a very frozen river, Great River Ouse in Cambridge, and I'm sitting upon the ice as we speak. And basically, this podcast and Substack is inspired by my love of water, my love of movement, travel, and all with the touch of a laid-back Aussie vibe. So if you haven't been here before, you can go through the back catalogue. Here I offer helpful journaling prompts along with various practices such as movement practices, meditation practices, and now as we move forward into some reformer yin practices. And I'm hoping that this will really help you find your laid back vibe to enjoy life a little bit more fully and to possibly help you reconnect with your purpose if you are feeling a bit lost in that realm. So before we get started, just to let you know, this is a free subscription, doesn't cost anything currently. However, if you would like to contribute an offering of thanks, then you can always donate on the link button and buy me a coffee. All subscriptions and donations are greatly appreciated. So if you're listening to this, go on to the physical Substack link and you'll see pictures and links and also the reformer yin shaped class that I've added to this podcast and post today. So what makes my first offering of 2026 different? Good question, right? Well, it's not just grounded in intuition and energy. But if you know me, you know that I always try and back things up from an Eastern and a Western perspective, meaning that a lot of the things that I say and write are also backed up in science-backed mechanisms. And this is going to show you the benefits of intentional practices like reformer yin, how aligning with the season can help influence your nervous system, stress response, and psychological resilience. So, let's get started. With pre-Christmas organising and expectations still lingering in the air and now post-festive holidays, you'll be forgiven if you're still feeling mentally hungover while you recover from the end of one year and with expectations for the new year hovering overhead. Exploring realistic daily new structures, a new rhythm that is more in tune with you might be what you're aiming for right now. So how are you feeling, dear friends? Are you feeling depleted? Do you find yourself already imposing too many goals and deadlines? So, right, let's take a short pause wherever you are right now, at work, working from home, picking up kids. Let's take a pause. Let's just breathe, be still for a few moments. And can you listen to what is stirring underneath or bubbling underneath the surface? Some prompts for this time that you might want to jot down on your phone or in a journal, notebook. What needs to be heard? What needs to be heard? What needs attention? What needs to release, maybe? What boundaries need to be honoured emotionally and physically? And what is emotional and physical nourishment looking like for you right now? What are you feeling, truthfully? And what do you need to feel safe? Typically, the winter months are for retreating, for listening, for eating warming foods and taking rest to prepare for moving forward in the spring. Many of these elements are reflected through many Eastern systems, including Ayurveda, Yoga, Yin Yoga, Reformer Yin, which draws from traditional Chinese medicine. So, all of these systems share one thing in common: they honor seasonal transitions rather than rushing them, which is essential for our nervous system. Seasonal biology and the nervous system. So, from a physiological and possibly a psychological standpoint, any seasonal framework closely mirrors our modern understanding of our biological rhythms. Because human systems operate in cycles of stimulation, recovery, and integration. During winter and late winter, our circadian rhythms slow down. It gives our tissue a chance to repair. So our tissue repair increases and our autonomic nervous system benefits from greater parasympathetic dominance, which is the rest and digest part of our nervous system. So moving away from the fight and flight response. So when we ignore these rhythms and continue to push high output, the nervous system often remains in a low grade sympathetic state, which is the fight and flight response. And over time, this can reduce our capacity for recovery, impair our breath mechanics, and it isn't great. So the body isn't asking necessarily for a complete reset, but instead what it's asking for is more regulation. So in Chinese traditional medicine, the winter is known as the water phase. And we're currently in that phase right now. It is a season, like I mentioned, associated with conservation, storage, and deep restoration. And this phase is governed by the systems in the body, known as the kidney and the bladder systems, which in Chinese traditional medicine relate not only to fluid regulation and skeletal support, but also speaks to the body's capacity for endurance, adaptability, and the body's stress response for recovery, resilience, and nervous system stability. From a physiological perspective, this seasonal framework aligns closely with what we understand about human biology, because during winter and late winter, our metabolic demand naturally shifts, our circadian rhythms slow down, and the autonomic nervous system shows a greater need for the parasympathetic dominance to come forward so it can support repair, that integration, and energy preservation. So this is not a time for abrupt stops and starts, for abrupt resets like stop, start, constant stimulation, but instead it is more about a gradual consolidation. So a more fluid approach rather than stop, start, in other words. In traditional Chinese medicine, the kidney system is also closely associated with the element of fear and willpower. So we're diving into a little bit more about emotions and the psychological sides of ourselves. And practices that support this system are not about pushing through discomfort, but instead are about building trust in the body's capacity to adapt to what you're asking it to do. And the great thing about Reformer Yin is that it encourages stillness without collapse, effort without force. This balance supports emotional regulation alongside the physical resilience, which helps us meet challenge with steadiness rather than reactivity. We're responding instead of being reactive. Energetically, the water element is linked to fear and willpower, like I said, energetically, energy. So, when balanced, it supports this resilience and quiet strength. But when it's depleted, it can often show itself as anxiety, as fatigue. You might start to notice that you have more tension or more aches and pains in your lower back, or difficulty regulating your stress responses. So, seasonal practices during this phase aim to preserve our energy rather than to expend it. And it's a completely different vibe to like when we're in the spring and the summer, obviously. So, seasonally, this phase really is asking us for conservation rather than expenditure. So we are looking to create the conditions for strength to be restored instead of forced. Yeah, so many of us go against this natural cycle and flow. However, tuning into these shifts rather than overriding them can be profoundly supportive. And I've seen this in my private work with clients as well. And perhaps this is why the Chinese New Year or the lunar calendar often feels more aligned with who we really are. For how can we raise our vibration to meet the start of new cycles if our nervous system is completely depleted? Practicing with the season and Ayurveda. So, seasonal practices are not about stopping movement, they are instead about timing and intention. A winter asks us to consolidate, to integrate, to restore so that energy can be then mobilized effectively when activity naturally starts to increase and we start to move away from the dark and into the light and heading towards the spring. Reformer Yin really respects this phase because it supports tissue repair, neural integration, and long-term sustainability rather than short-term output. This is not a retreat from strength, but it is the foundation that allows strength, clarity, and momentum to return more efficiently and with a greater sense of ease. Equally, Ayurveda works with energies and elements of the universe, as well as seasons. After all, the universe, whether you may or may not know, is believed to be broken down into 5 elements: earth, water, fire, air, and ether, which are also the 5 seasons of Ayurveda. However, these are broken down into 3 types of characters, or 3 types known as the doshas. Vata equals movement, creativity, and change. Pitta equals transformation, intensity, and focus. And Kapha represents stability, calm, and nurturing. So everyone has all 3 doshas, but most people are dominant in 1 or 2. And this is said to shape their body, mind, digestion, habits, and emotional patterns, basically their natural blueprint. Ayurveda can help balance these energies through diet, lifestyle, certain exercises, and mindfulness tailored to what dosha you are, your unique dosha combination. So here, when we start to talk about the 3 doshas, the Vata dosha is known as the energy of movement. The elements here are air and ether. And the qualities are light, dry, cold, mobile, irregular, supple. So here you might tend to see from a body and physical pattern or trait perspective, these dosha types are usually very lean or thin. They have very dry skin and hair, and they're normally very active, hyperactive. So very quick movements and gestures. Irregular, they can have a very irregular appetite and digestion. From a psychological and behavioral viewpoint, the this type of dosha can be very creative, very imaginative, and quick thinking. Very energetic, but can tire equally very easily. Often adaptable, but can also feel anxious and restless under stress. But they thrive and they love variety and change. The health repercussions for this Vata dosha is that you're prone to dryness. That's not just your skin and your hair, but that can also be creaky joints. You can get bloating, constipation, or cold related issues. Your circulation may be affected, for example, so you may always be feeling cold. And so the way to balance this would be with really more regular routines and warm, nourishing food. So in Ayurveda, the tendency is to move away from salads and juices and cold foods in this phase, and to give the body warmer foods like maybe stewed apple and soups and dals and curries and chili con carne, or warm, really passive food, and not particularly over spicy either, but just nourishing warm food. Eating very like rooted vegetables, like really grounding, moist and warm foods. Like I said, trying to instigate and maintain a regular schedule for sleep, meals and work, which is what I am personally working on at the moment, which is really difficult for most people. And the Vata types benefit from more gentle exercises like yoga, tai chi and walking. Then we move from the Vata, which is the air and the ether, and we are going over to the Pitta. And this is said to represent the energy of transformation. Here, the elements are water and fire. And the qualities are hard, sharp, oily, intense, light. And the physical trait that you might see in a person would be a medium build, quite muscular. They would have a warm body temperature. They would have a good appetite, very strong digestion, but they would be prone to rashes, acne, or overheating their system. Their internal system may overheat. The psychological perspective from this Pitta type would be that this person or these people are quite focused, quite ambitious, quite intelligent, very strong-willed, passionate. But the flip side, like with anything, the other side of the coin is that they can also be easily irritable or impatient. But they do enjoy challenges and intellectual pursuits. The health tendency for the Pitta is that they can be very prone to inflammation. They can also suffer from acid reflux or minor skin irritations. They can be prone to overworking or overthinking, which obviously then contributes to their stress load. And the balance for Pitta would be, again, calming routines and cooler foods, not necessarily salads, but don't want to go for anything super spicy. They want to also avoid overeating as well. Slightly cooling foods and environments. So you don't want to be like a Pitta type wouldn't benefit from going into a sauna, for example. That would just aggravate their constitution. They might want to practice meditation or calming exercises, eating foods that are less spicy, less dense and lighter, and engaging in moderate exercise, and at all costs avoiding excessive heat, because obviously there's heat there. And then the third one is basically earth and water. It's the energy of stability. So with Kapha, and already you might be getting a sense of where you fit into this dosha type. But the Kapha dosha is known more as the energy of stability. Earth and water slow, steady, soft, cold, oily. There's a combination of qualities associated with this dosha. How they might appear, or how you might appear, would be strong build, sometimes denser bones, for example, heavier but not overweight necessarily. Might mean your bone density is heavier. They have smooth but oily skin, so they might have combination skin. Calm movements and steady stamina. So it's really important for these types to find the middle path, rather than going up and down. 1 minute you're up, next minute you're down. Like to try and find that middle path, as the Buddhists say. They have generally a slower digestion as well, and they might eat slower as well. Their behavior and their psychological traits are reflected in loyalty. They're very patient, they're very nurturing, they're very calm. However, the flip side of that is they can be very resistant to change. They enjoy more of a regular routine, and they may have a tendency to get attached quite easily to people, places, or things, or feel very lethargic. The health tendencies to watch out here would be that you can be prone to weight gain. And obviously, there's plenty of articles out there, but if you're in the menopause or premenopausal, then it is actually worth considering looking into what Ayurveda suggests as well. Just a helpful hint. The health tendency psychologically is they can also get quite depressed and low motivation if their dosha is out of balance. And the balance really for them is stimulating, energizing, and light practices. They should engage in regular exercise to stay active. Eat lighter, spicier and more energizing food. So you can see how each dosha type is slightly different. And also with this dosha, they need to keep changing routines. Or not keep changing, but occasionally change the routine to avoid this sense of stagnation. And also they should stay mentally stimulated and socially engaged with others. So, do you resonate with any of the above? Obviously, you can read this as well. There's a list on the post itself, so you can check that out. So, Reformer Yin. Physical practices then, like Reformer Yin, embody the philosophy of moving with what we've just been talking about for the last 20 minutes. Of moving with the seasons. It offers space to slow down, to regulate and reconnect, allowing the body and the nervous system to move through change with more ease and awareness. This way of marking time is more consistent then with how the body actually functions, like I said previously. Human physiology operates through biological rhythms and adaptive cycles, not abrupt resets. So neural, hormonal, and musculoskeletal systems require periods of load recovery and integration to be able to function optimally. When these rhythms are ignored, and that doesn't happen, particularly in relation to the autonomic nervous system, we often attempt to accelerate output at the very moment the body is signaling for downregulation, recovery, and consolidation. And therefore, understanding how you hold, stand, and support yourself really does reflect your approach to your physicality and well-being. So why is Reformer Yin particularly supportive now? And obviously in Reformer Yin, we work a lot with the meridians and the changing seasons. So there are particular shapes, particular practices that are relevant for the seasons, but we're talking about the winter season here. So Reformer Yin generally offers a practice that aligns naturally with seasons, like we said. This season, the slower pace, the longer held positions, and the external support of the reformer and its springs reduce unnecessary muscular effort and mechanical load, which in turn allow the nervous system to downregulate. And this supports our vagal tone and improves our breath mechanics, helps restore balance between our sympathetic drive and our parasympathetic recovery. The longer holds, also importantly, allow connective tissue and myofascia and fascia networks time to adapt without force. And this supports hydration of the tissues, which improves joint feedback and ultimately promotes a sense of safety within the nervous system itself, which is key during this winter water phase. So Reformer Yin encourages stillness without collapse, effort without force. The balance supports emotional regulation alongside physical resilience, helping us meet challenge with steadiness rather than reactivity. And here is a snapshot of a Reformer class where I talk about some of the shapes, the body focus, and the meridians. It's just a snapshot. And so let me see if I can pull that up. So if you never look at a written post, then I'm going to say it on this podcast. But you can see the shape if you obviously look at it. So kidney is a yin. It's a yin energy. So it's passive. And like with everything, there's two sides to the coin. Right, so we want to be passive, but we want a little bit of activeness. But again, there are particular meridians that will stimulate this energy. And when we look at the kidney, it is predominantly a yin energy, which is a passive energy. And the body focus will be around the knees, the hip flexors, the pelvis, and the lower back. Those are the body parts that are normally associated with the kidney meridian. If we were doing a class, we would be doing some lizard lunges, some bound quadricep stretches. 5 toes is a really good way. Hip flexor over the reformer foot bar is an amazing release. Inner thigh release with strap laying on the side and some flowing cat and cows. If we are looking at balancing our body in terms of balancing the yin and the yang in this instance, the yang is the bladder. The yang, the bladder represents gentleness. So we can start to see those traits of the winter theme, like resting, be gentle with yourself, all of that sort of stuff here. The body focus is on the spine, the posterior, particularly legs, neck, and as I said, back body. So here we will be looking at working with hamstring releases with the strap. We'll be looking at doing an IT band hold shape with the box. We will be looking at doing a half pigeon over the box, occipital release with the base of the cranial skull over the foot bar. There are many things, and basically you need to come to a class to experience that or take a class online. Needless to say, in Reformer Yin, the purpose is for the springs. Generally, if we don't want the carriage to move at all, we would just put all the springs on. But with a lot of the shapes, we are looking at a lighter spring tension to support the heaviness of our bones, of our joints, to help create space in the joints, as opposed to working against the spring tension, which is going to make it a more of an active practice, because then we'd be moving against that. In Reformer Yin, we're not working against anything. We're just being there and letting the spring tension support us. Bridging the Western biomechanics, neuroscience with Eastern Chinese medicine principles. So the way you hold, stand, and support your body reflects how your musculoskeleton and your nervous system is organized over time. From a Western perspective, these postural strategies are revealed and learned through motor patterns, how we distribute load in the body, and autonomic tone. From an Eastern viewpoint, they also express how energy is conserved, directed, or depleted within the body. And often, observing these patterns can offer insight into your habitual holding behaviors, both physically and behavioral, highlighting where compensation and inefficiency or stress responses have become so embedded in the system that it becomes your natural go-to behavior or pattern. Integrating biology, biomechanics, and balance. So I was teaching on Friday. We are now Tuesday. So after one of my classes on Friday, I found myself in conversation with a couple of students that have been coming for a few weeks now, one whom is a teacher. And she started to share how much she appreciated the way that biology and biomechanics are woven into the classes I teach, and how understanding why we move the way we do has helped her recognize her own patterns more clearly. That exchange really stayed with me because it speaks to something fundamental. While reformer Pilates is often associated with control, precision, and technique, it is also a very powerful system of rehabilitation for both the mind and the body. And sometimes I feel this actually gets left out of a lot of content that you now see on various social media platforms. The patterns we adopt in movement often mirror the patterns we live by. So, how do you approach physical challenge? Is it with constant effort and drive, or is it with being responsive and being adaptable? From both Eastern and Western perspectives, sustainable movement requires balance. In Eastern frameworks, this is the interplay between yang. So the yang is the active, heated outdoor energy, and yin is the more passive, receptive, restorative states. In Western physiology, this mirrors the relationship then between the sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight, and the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest and digest. Most modern life we know already places us in the prolonged sympathetic activation. Excuse me, the constant doing, processing, and output is exhausting. And when this state becomes continuous, it just leads to depletion. You begin to switch off. You have reduced recovery and increased reactivity. Movement practices that only reinforce this pattern may unintentionally also add to the load. When we intentionally access the parasympathetic states through breath, slower pacing, and supportive movement, we begin the process of nervous system. Well, basically, we're harmonizing the nervous system. And over time, this then can start to reduce the reactivity. It can start to improve the regulation, and it allows both the physical and psychological resilience to develop. Certain styles of reformer, when approached with awareness, can offer a space to practice this balance, not just in the body, but also in how we meet effort, challenge, and the rest in life. So, thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this podcast. I've given you a lot of information, but I hope that you find it as relevant as I do. I want to thank you for being here, for reading, listening, and sharing my work. And I really hope that you may benefit in some way from the insights and practices that I've provided you with to help you navigate your personal and life's ever-changing landscape in this crazy world of ours. SlowForm Living is inspired, as I said in the introduction, by my slow living on the water. I moved from London just prior to COVID to start a different way of life. And I've been here 7 years and I love it. you can expect prompts, honest discussion, movement, and practices to help you find your laid back vibe here. And I do provide and I write various insights from my background in academia, science, nature, Zen, and various philosophies to help heal and inspire longevity along the way. And all of this is coming to you from my floating lodge on the water here in Cambridge, England. So, thank you for reading, for listening. Please feel free to share it with others because it's free. And I will look forward to seeing you next time as we continue our slow form living journey together. Until next time, take it easy, maybe implement some of the things or explore some of the insights that I've given you to help us get through this winter period. If you are listening, you might want to read the post on Substack. There is a lovely, beautiful picture of one of my reformer stretch yin classes by candlelight on the system at the beginning of this post. So yeah, just take it easy, soothe yourself, prepare yourself for what is coming in the spring. Until next time.